joining us on another episode of Teatime in Wanasa. We're really excited today to be joined by a special guest, Hakeemah Cummings, on our women's series. My name is Anfal.
I'm abroad. Thank
And I'm Razan.
So my name is Hakeemah Cummings, and I am a modest fashion stylist. That's what I do on Instagram. That's what I do at events. But more than that, I'm a Muslim. I'm from Chicago. I'm a mother. And yeah, so that's it.
Mashallah, just like a
That's a lot.
multifaceted, like
Yeah,
badass.
I'm from Chicago, and I feel like that's really where it starts off for me, of course. But before that, my parents came here from Belize. So I was the first of, now there's 10 of us, kids that,
Allah.
yeah, that I was the first like American born. So
Are you the oldest?
no, they had 3 in Belize before they had me.
Oh,
So alhamdulillah, I have some older siblings. So yeah, coming from Chicago, a lot of different experiences. Seeing as Chicago's a metropolitan area, I was born in the city of Chicago. Um, and just kind of school experiences as you go to elementary school, go to high school, and I kind of went all around the city. Starting from the south side, then going to the north side, then eventually the suburbs. So you kind of have different populations that you're, getting familiar with, different experiences that are forming. Um, and then now my family kind of lives in the suburbs, and I studied, at University of Chicago. I got my master's degree. I'm a biologist at heart. That was my first love. It still is because I teach college biology now.
mashallah.
But after kind of going on the road towards medical school, which was the epitome of my dreams for most of my life, I kind of swerved that and decided not to after getting in, and pursued a more creative path, entrepreneurship and things like that, which is what led me to modest fashion, which was 8 years ago is when I really started doing styling.
Was that scary? Because I feel like I know I've experienced this when you plan your life going in a specific direction, or like you see yourself being in a specific profession, right? And then all of a sudden, but at the same time, you have passions for different things. All of a sudden, you're choosing something different. Like, how is that? How is that decision?
Um, I would say it was both relieving and also heartbreaking,
Yeah.
because the relief, well, I'll talk about the heartbreak first. um, like it was heartbreaking because I had been told, like I knew that one of my things was that I could not pursue a degree in medicine if that meant that I would have to sacrifice some of the Islamic values that I had taken upon myself to truly hold like true in my life. And
Mm.
that one of those was that I would not take out hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans, interest bearing loans.
Yeah.
No.
So, although my passion led me towards a career that would definitely have that burden, I was like, I'm still going to pursue that passion because you never know how things will turn out. Like, I know of people who, there's this one story that I would always remember. I would always like tell myself, like, there's that one guy, that Muslim guy, his name was Muhammad, and he had the same he had the same kind of, I knew his sister, so his sister would tell me like his story, that he had the same kind of thing, like I'm not going to go to medical school unless there's another path to paying for it. And literally there was a rich like graduate of that medical school that he applied to, and he would always choose one male of color that had been accepted to that school to pay his entire tuition.
Mm.
And he got that spot, and I was like, miracles happen. So I'm going to pursue this as far as the fork in the road like takes me. It's either I go or I don't. um so the heartbreak was that I ended up not being able to, right? But it was also a relief because the whole time I'm taking my MCATs, and then I'm taking it again, and then I'm like getting my master's degree to try to beef up my resume and like my application and things like that. I'm doing all of these things, and in the back of my mind I'm thinking, what if I don't go? What if like I literally have to make that choice because that miracle did not happen for me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so the relief was that like I made dua that whole time as well, that our istikhara dua is very powerful,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it guides us, it like centers us. As crazy as school can get you and as crazy as life can get you, if you know that its decision is coming up, whether that's school or marriage or like whatever it is, and you're constantly like referring that decision back to Allah, like if it's good for me, give it to me, and if it's not good for me, take it
Get from
away.
my
I don't
path.
want it.
Yeah.
That the relief is like, I feel like, okay, that was not meant for me, and so if I had gotten something that wasn't meant for me, and that can't happen anyway, it wouldn't have
Yeah.
been good for me, you know
Hmm.
so
Peace of mind.
yeah,
I
that was the
think that's so incredible because like your worst case scenario for your life was not going to medical school, right? And it's like sometimes God makes our so-called worst case scenarios come true and they end up taking you to like beautiful new paths. And it just
Mhm.
shows like resilience and like the beauty of just like being able to reinvent yourself because so many like I feel like some of us get stuck on an idea and you're like, if this doesn't happen, I don't know what I'm
Mhm.
gonna be and who I
Yeah,
am. And
yeah,
it's
yeah. It's so
scary.
true.
Referring the decision back to God. I love that. If
Yeah.
we did that with everything in our lives, we'll be good no matter what.
Yeah.
That's how
Right.
we're getting through these times right now. It's just remembering like it's not just about us and our little bubble. Like there's so
Yeah,
much more to life and what you're able to see.
yeah.
So I mean you had that at a young age. You've known that. So how did it basically now that you're here, like do you feel at peace with the decisions you did make to get to this point?
Um, well, I feel content. I do feel content because I feel like I've filled my life with other things that I find to be enriching, right? And I thought being a doctor would have been like, I'm helping people. I'm at the pinnacle of like knowing this thing, this biology subject that I love so much. I'm like, I've learned so much more. I've now learned about like disease and I'm helping people and I wanted to travel and all of that. I feel like I am content, but there is a part of me that every time I think about that time when I was approaching that decision, that it does feel, and I it's like as if I can't put my finger on it, but it can bring me to tears,
Mm.
because like I feel like the point the aspect about it is not that I don't I don't remember that it's Allah who brought me there, right? Because that's the relief, that's the comfort.
Yeah.
But it was like when I was trying to figure out what are the resources out there for Muslims like me who want to pursue higher education, and and we didn't find it, like people like me, we didn't find it, we didn't find help in our community.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like I That's heartbreaking to me still, because there's so many people who would have done this, would have done that had there been the resources.
Yeah.
But back then there was nothing. So I was approaching individuals like,
Mm.
Yeah.
you are a prominent doctor in this community. Can you help me? Can I made like a GoFundMe? Like imagine like getting a GoFundMe for medical school. Like it just seems a little too, it seemed at that time, like that was like 10 years ago, it seemed like a little too much. It's just
Yeah.
like me standing on
Honestly,
my own platform trying to get the world to save me. You know what I'm saying?
that's
Yeah.
like I think you should be so proud of yourself because so many Muslim women, Black women, like we don't know how to advocate for ourselves. And I
No.
think the fact that you went like put up a GoFundMe and went to talk to people,
Mhm.
I don't think I would have had like the balls to do
Yeah.
that. I think that's so incredible and something like we can all learn from because like we're taught to just like just like make
To just
yourself
take
smaller
it.
sometimes, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm,
Make
Yeah.
yourself small. Exactly.
mm,
Yeah.
And I felt like I was out of my place to have made myself that big of a deal, to approach people who otherwise, like maybe they support bigger things, like they supported like the school that I went to, they supported the masjid that was in the community, but why would they support me as an individual?
Hmm.
So it
mm,
was always like a little uncomfortable when I would approach another person, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the one that's going to really help me. Like they're going to know the resources. Maybe it's not going to be from their pocket, but they'll know the resources to connect me. Like some people will rally behind me. And when I found that pretty much no one did, and in that process, I did, and it wasn't a feeling. It was the reality that there was a race factor to that as well. And I felt that if I wasn't who I am, maybe I would have gotten the support.
Yeah,
Um, and that feeling is oftentimes not baseless.
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
we know that time and time again, that in a parallel universe where we didn't have this skin or have this reality about our appearance, maybe some people would advocate for us more and would be like, okay, I'm going to take you under my wing. I'm not just going to just, throw you $50. I'm going to really help you to become that doctor that you want to be.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you talk about like like how I feel right now, it's a contentment that Allah gave me what I deserved and what I needed, and
Mhm.
took me away from what I didn't. But that part of it where, like, the race factor, or the lack of support, lack of resources,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
like, man, I just wish, because it's so many other people like me.
yeah.
And how many people were blocked from their opportunities because, like,
Yeah.
you're looking for support and you don't get it.
So let's kind of talk about not only the Black experience in these
Yeah.
situations, but we're Black women, right? What
Mhm.
was the demographic that you were living in during that time?
Mostly Palestinian.
Okay.
So I mentioned how I started off my life in inner city Chicago, and
Hmm.
then we moved to the suburbs. So the southwest suburbs of Chicago is known to be like Little Palestine. It's like predominantly Palestinian, and it was a great experience to kind of be in another person's culture like that in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, like my first experience with racism was in seventh grade when I entered that school,
Mm.
and that's when I started to understand my blackness. Like, why am I like this and you guys are like that? Like, why are people being treated differently? Why am I asked certain questions that other people are not asked, or questioned about certain things that other people are not questioned about? And I think a lot of times people want you to, like, for example, they want you to have some kind of evidence that, if, like, my statement that if I looked differently, maybe I would have gotten the support. They want some kind of evidence for that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not like a white skinned Hakima parallel to me who also got in school, and then she went and then I didn't. So we're not
Yeah.
going to have those parallel experiences to, like, directly compare to. But when I think back to one meeting that I had with one of the most prominent, and if I had the courage, I would say the name, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
One of the most
Doubt
prominent
it.
organizations in that community. Um, they were all about, like, Arab American rights, right?
Mhm.
That was one of the things that they really, that was like their flag that they raised all the time. It was all about Arab American rights. And so I, not having that many figures to even know to approach, that was one of the people who I approached, because I know that they were all about advocating for people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So when I went there and I explained, me and a friend of mine who was really great at, like, being right there by my side. She, every time I was, like, looking for a new resource, she was right there with me. So she made that connection, and she set up that meeting for me to go and just talk to them about my situation. And so after explaining that, my decision is, I will go if I get the funding outside of interest, or I will just not go. Like, I will give up my seat. And
Mm.
they were shocked to know that I would have that stance.
Yeah.
And they were like, so what do you think about us, like, the building that we sit in right now, like, where there's a mortgage on this, like, we're paying interest to the bank for this building. What about X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, well, that's your decision that you've made, and this is a decision that I made.
Yeah.
And then they said that, well, they to my face said that I'm not as smart as I thought I am. Like, she said, well, you're not as smart as you think you are. After
Oh
I've said,
my
I went to
gosh.
University
Okay.
of Chicago, I have a master's degree, I got into the University of Illinois at
Mm.
Chicago, Champaign-Urbana Medical School. Like, I'm saying that I am deserving, right? And then
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
told me that I'm not deserving. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. And then
To your
furthermore, what she
face.
said to my face, yeah, as
Yeah.
I sat there on this lone platform, vulnerable, that's what she said to me. These are the types of things that make me emotional. And I smile through, like, trying not to cry.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, and then she furthermore said that, that my story sounds like those people, and I know what people that she was referring to, those people who, they crowd up 10 kids in an apartment, and they refuse to buy a house. They refuse to buy a house because of this interest thing. But what kind of life are they providing for their kids? They have all these kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. My family has never owned a house, and we have that amount of kids. And my
Yeah.
brothers and sisters always piled up in a bedroom, and we loved it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To build our family unit. But for her, what she saw was like just another Black case asking for help that was not warranted, because you should be able to pull yourself up, buy your house, get your loans, and get your life together. Why should you ask me for help? And I sat there, and a lot of times when things happen to you in the moment, you don't know like what the heck to do. You're just
Yeah.
done. And you
Yeah.
almost don't even know how to understand it until later
Can't
on.
process.
So
Yeah.
I took the time to then understand it. Like, I went to my house, I talked to my mom, and I was like, she said these things. And I'm like, but you and Bubba, like, you guys both, like, this is like, we never had more than a 3-bedroom apartment,
Yeah.
And like, why does she have to question? I didn't question her. Why is she questioning me like that?
Yeah.
So my mother and my sister, like, they are troopers, right? So they pulled up their abayas, and they, like, they wrapped their hijabs. They're like, we're gonna go down there, and we
I
are gonna
need this
tell that
energy.
I love it.
right? And so I called first. I was like, okay, we're not gonna just rush up on her. I'm gonna call her first and see what she says. Like, these are the things that I didn't like about the meeting. So, like, what's your response to that? And she said, if you're calling about an apology, I'm not gonna give you one. This is what happened. So then,
And she's so called in an organization that's supposed to help people, or at least like she doesn't know how to be courteous and cordial.
That's the
That's-
thing. Like,
and her demographic of people that she helped,
Yeah.
mostly because of the demographic of the area, and the umbrella that it was an Arab American organization.
Yeah.
That was those were the bulk of the people that she helped. So it was easy for her to then help those cases. But when a different kind of case comes, it's like, why would I help you? Let me question you about why you want to do this. Let me tell you about yourself and your people.
Honestly,
So
if you-
my sister and my mom and I went back. She dug her heels in and did not offer an apology, nor did she back down at all. And at that point, I realized that incident was like the pinnacle of like me understanding, okay, I'm not just someone asking for help, I'm a Black person asking for help.
Mhm.
And so why do I feel like in this community I can find that help, even though this is a community I've been in since 7th grade? Like I excelled at their school. I was a valedictorian at their school.
And she said, "You're not as smart as I thought you were."
Oh, really?
No,
Girl.
you're not as smart
You
as
are.
you think you are.
As you think you are.
Yeah, and that
Like-
that statement has haunted me. Like, it's horrible,
And
right?
I feel like we live in a society, whether we are Muslims and Blacks and or whatever, where we all set boundaries for ourselves as individuals, right? What I do is different from you do, whether it be in like an Islamic context or another context, right? Let's say I take loans, you don't take loans. I do this, you don't do that. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's whatever you have decided is okay for you, is between you and God. But for
Right.
you to then come and question someone else and try to like berate them and degrade them because of a decision that they have made is completely unacceptable.
When it's actually the
Had-
right decision by a lot
Yeah.
of standards. Like,
Exactly. And I think honestly, had it been like a Palestinian or Pakistani woman that walked into her office, she would have been like, "Wow, mashallah, you're so religious, you're so close to the deen." Like
Mhm.
I feel like she would have. I mean, we don't know what she actually would have done, but I feel like she would have thought of it differently. Whereas
Yeah.
you, as a Black woman, it's like, "Oh, you think you're better than me?"
Yeah.
That's what it.
And
That's
that's what
how
the
I think it
question.
happened.
That's what the question when she said about the building. What about the building that you sit in right now? Like, basically, like, her paycheck or like whatever funding she gets for her organization goes towards some interest too, to
Yeah.
pay for the lights and whatever, like the building that she's in. So it's kind of like how about you get in your place? Like, you be in your place to think that for you to think that you're better than me, to be more religious than me, or like whatever she interpreted about my decision. It was like, no, like, I have to put you back in your place,
It's taken us growing up to really realize our Blackness in the context of America, right?
Yeah.
But you see that even though we put Islam as one of our highest identities, we don't see that unity across the board. We don't see other Muslims understand, like seeing our Islam even, you know?
Mhm.
And that to
Mhm.
me is super frustrating
Yeah.
because we're always backing them, we're always like uplifting them and things like that.
Mhm.
Whether it comes to domestic or issues abroad, we're always trying to fight for their freedoms. But
Yeah.
it's even like within the communities, they've created their own types of systematic racism. And it's
Yeah.
really like at this point, I think I love what you're doing with your platform with uplifting Black voices and being like,
Yeah.
I see you, I see what you're doing, and it's
Mhm.
unacceptable because even though like your life has moved on past the medical school phase, and still like that phase in your life, that you're using your voice now for the next person, for the next Hakeemah who's
Yeah.
like, where are the people in my community, you know?
It comes very natural that if I'm choosing models for a runway, I'm not going to choose only the light skinned models, right? Like, so, like I've seen other designers do, or people who are presenting collections would only choose those that fit their typecast, um, and being able to, find a network of women online that are also Black and have that's a shared experience due to that. It's like it comes natural, like it's like you gravitate towards them, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So how has it been cultivating a space within the styling Muslim fashion community?
Um, well, early on, like what I really valued at the beginning that I made a conscious decision about was that I wanted to be of service to designers.
Mm.
So I wanted to be kind of a bridge between people who create clothing, whether that's with their two hands or maybe they're a boutique and they choose modest clothing from some like warehouse or wherever, however you source your items. I wanted to be that bridge to bring those items um, to the audience, whether that's like an in-person audience at a fashion show, or that's their marketing materials, or that's like coming to someone's house and like um, giving them like a wardrobe overhaul or anything like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to cultivate a space that was a bridge between the providers and those who wear. So I felt like styling would fill that space, and I also felt like there was a value in longevity and not just thinking, okay, I'm cute, or like I can take a good selfie or I can take a good outfit picture. I felt like that wasn't it, for me. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I needed
That's
to
something
stand
like
on
that.
something a lot more stable. So that's why I really started in college going to the thrift stores, because back in the day they did have long sleeve
Yeah.
dresses
Yeah.
and balloon sleeves and like,
Yeah.
different shapes. It wasn't the same for like one body type, like the same
Mhm.
Yeah.
kind of thing that people kept carrying. So I would go to the thrift store and I'd like cut stuff up and, do a little sewing, and I'd create something and I'd wear it to college, and people like, oh my God, where'd you get that from? I'm like, oh, you can never get it
Can
from the
you
thrift
pull up
store.
a pic?
I know. If you have old
I'd love to see.
styling
Yeah, I would
stuff,
love it.
we would
Oh, I
love to
probably do
see
have old pictures. Yeah.
that.
I
Okay,
would
we
love
definitely
to
want to
see
see
that.
that.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that was the question was, how did you cultivate a space? I just wanted to do something that I felt like was useful, and that no one else was residing in that space. I didn't see any other stylists around, and that later on I could still be doing it 10 years later. So what I was saying was that there was a boiling point a few years ago when there was an event that Modanisa sponsored and invited certain influencers and bloggers to be a part of it. And they all looked the same.
Mm.
Mm.
Or there was one sister that was there who's racially ambiguous, and I don't think anybody knew that she was actually Black until she said it in that moment to say, I was the only Black
Oh,
person. That's when I realized she was actually Black, because she's racially ambiguous. I couldn't tell, you
I
know?
know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, so I really couldn't tell, and it really didn't matter to me until that moment when she was like, I was the only one. Then I was like, okay, so that's what we really do. And other people had noticed that a long time ago, but again, I was just like tunnel vision, trying to like establish my stuff and like do what I do. And that's when I really started to look left and right, and I'm like, okay, like we really need to be a lot more vocal. Like, this was good that we were vocal about this, because it like somebody wrote like a letter that went viral and all that stuff. And it was like we had really taken that brand to task. And so even in my small, corner of the internet that I have, and I'm creating my little content that people see, I try to make a difference. And when I do feel like there is a resistance to that and I can attribute it to my race, then I do call it out because it's my responsibility. There was this one person who approached me and asked me to do a photo shoot for her. So I booked a model, and that model happens to be extremely dark skinned and extremely beautiful. And I thought she was perfect for the shoot. She wore these citrus colors and it was beautiful. And that brand got the photos back. She never asked what the model was going to look like. She never asked me for a specific model, which I don't generally ask people what kind of model they want. I just choose a model that fits the clothing. It doesn't have to be a certain look. And so when I sent her back the photos, she said, I don't, it was a two-part thing, right? It was like, do the photo shoot, and then I want you to do something else, right? I'll just say something else. And she was like, I'm going to cancel the something else. And, I don't think that the photos went that well. And I was like, let me dig a little bit more. What the heck you're talking about? Because I looking at your feed, you only have white skinned Arabs on your timeline. So here I was blessing you with a dark skinned model, and you rejected that. So I'm going to ask you more. I was like, so what's wrong with the photos? And she said, oh, I don't think the styling was good. And I was like, you approached me as a stylist. You saw my body of work and you don't like the styling when the styling is flawless. Like, don't try to, no, like this, it's not about the styling. I was like, and then she said, well, after I said that, she said, well, I posted one of the photos and it didn't do so well. And it didn't do so well. Like, it didn't have 1,000 likes like the other pictures. And I told her that the reason why is most likely because you've built an audience that's used to looking at a certain type of woman in your garment. So when you gave them something different and they already have biases that say that that does not look beautiful to them, then they're just like, why did they choose a dark skinned person for the photos now? And I'm like, instead of saying, I'm going to cancel part 2 of our collab and I won't use the pictures anymore, why don't you use the pictures as a way to diversify your brand? Because it's important. It's important for every brand to be diverse.
Yeah.
And she never responded to that. How dare you approach a Black woman and not think that a Black woman was going to implement herself into your content? Like, of course I was going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, why else? Why wouldn't I? And it wasn't even that I'm going to insult you with this, like I'm going to throw these Black pictures at you. It was like, no, I'm going to uplift your brand by giving you something more than you have ever thought of,
She thought you were going to stay inside the box.
Yeah.
And do what everybody else does and all of that. And
and
it's just about the likes only.
Right. She was like, if it's not getting the views or the likes, then, and I'm like, it's not. And I told her in that email, I was like, we're too wrapped up in social media about how many followers you have and how much likes you have. Like, I've never been a viral sensation online. I've never been like the one who everyone is flocking to. But I didn't place value on that over the other thing. Like, I valued diversity. I valued like being able to still be here and not like feel like my content is fluffy, like I valued those things. And so even if it doesn't bring like, 1 million people to my page, I'm still happy with it,
And it's authentic engagement overall, right? Like you're not just building to get money and to get views. You're building authentic engagement, community, understanding, diversity. And those are not things that these brands really look for.
I think like people all like tend to forget the Black buying power, right? And if you really like diversify how you advertise and appeal to a different demographic, you're not going to fail. And it'll actually like build growth, and it'll also like create room in the table for other people. But if you continue to just like pigeonhole yourself and have this like specific mentality that just breeds racist, like like implicit racism and breeds like
Yeah.
all of these negative ideas, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing the community a disservice.
Following. Yeah. And if you've been one note this whole time, then it's gonna screw you over now because people are unfollowing, people are holding
Mhm.
you accountable, and now's the moment when you realize that you didn't make good decisions in your business practices this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, think about your character when it comes to injustice, time and time again. Like, you've seen that you need to step up. You need to talk for people who are facing inequality in your community, right? And so the fact that you're quiet is just, it's completely unacceptable. And
Yeah.
people aren't going to listen to you. They don't care about the flower that you saw in your garden or the coffee that you had that morning. Like, you can't continue as if life is normal when people feel like they are being attacked. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So recently there was so I made a post in my story that so my feed post. So one of the people who like responded to me, like I've had a lot of like more so DM conversations with like individual people, which I love to do that. Like not all of the best conversations are like in your public comments. Like sometimes it's in the DMs and the voice notes. So I was talking with one sister who was like resonating with what I talked about. And I was like, you know what? Like this whole sticking to a theme, and in that post I talked about your blush nude pink kind of like you have to be perfect kind of thing. It's like people are able to break out of that, and they've shown recently that they have been able to break out of that
Mhm.
and console tragedy and be empathetic, but but in that empathy, and I don't want to question sincerity of them in that moment, but when you contrast it to when it doesn't fit the theme, like literally the color palette,
Mm.
then you know that then maybe you can question the sincerity, because when that there was a recent tragedy that happened with one of the bloggers that have been around for the longest time, right? And I felt that so deeply because like even me and my sister, like we talked on the phone. My sister cried because she had a recent tragedy just like that girl's, like she, well, I don't know if I want to be super specific,
Yeah.
but anyways, in solidarity with that tragedy from that blogger, everyone shared a pink box. But when you're building a certain color palette, a certain mood, and a certain whatever, sharing a pink box goes with that. So you can be like consoling to the tragedy and be empathetic and all of that, but it also fits your general theme. Now, some of those same people have not shared the black face of George Floyd on their feed, not even on their story, right? They haven't shared the words Black Lives Matter. They haven't shared some of these like things that have been shared millions of times over everyone's feeds.
Yeah.
Um, and it because it doesn't fit their theme, like it doesn't fit their theme, and what they've prioritized is that over anything else. And what I said in the post was also that yeah, you might be making your dua and you might be doing those things, and those are more powerful than sharing something on your feed.
Mhm.
Those
Yeah.
are more powerful because that could actually make change.
Yeah.
But we are holding people accountable because when you're an influencer, you you want that reciprocal engagement. Like you're giving people content and you want people to kind of give you back too, right?
Yeah.
So those people who are giving you back, they're your supporters. They're the ones who got you here anyway, right?
Yeah.
So what if 10%, 20% of those people were black people? So you show solidarity when it's a pink box, but when it's like any of those other things, like there's so many things you could be sharing. Like you could even make your little pink box with the words Black Lives Matter, or like with a
Yeah.
quote, I can't breathe, or like you could do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you choose to share your next brunch or like you standing under a rainbow and you completely ignore the whole thing, or you throw a bone late in the game,
Yeah.
it's like we see that, we read that, and we don't appreciate that.
And I think holding them accountable is the important part. It's for us not to forget that piece when things slow down or quiet down and people want to go back to normal life, because that's what's going to happen eventually. We need to remember this and document it and
Yeah.
hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend and I was like, if you're in May 2020 and you're still at the that really sucks phase of the Black Lives Matter movement, when you see a black tragedy and you're like,
Mhm.
dang, that really sucks, this country's really effed up, and you move on, you're not doing it. If your heart didn't drop, if you didn't feel sick, if you don't feel obligated to post, to talk about it, to connect with people, you didn't feel it. And that's not where you should be right now. You need to check yourself to be like,
Mhm.
why is this not resonating with me? Why
Yeah.
do I not feel like I'm emotionally invested in this
Yeah.
situation?
And then take action. So right, you
Yeah.
identified that now. Now talk about it. Admit that you don't know enough. Admit that you need to, you need to understand this better. Ask the questions, but don't sit in your little high chair and think that this
Mhm.
issue is not related to what you do. Because it's
Right.
related to everything and everybody.
Yeah. And like and what I also mentioned was like, as an influencer, you know the power of the share button because you want everyone to press share on your outfit.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you know that power and you like that power brought you to your place that you are right now, and you don't use it even a share in your stories. Like even just that is like, it's just mind blowing. And another person, and it's like aggravating sometimes, the response, because you think you're like speaking and you're here being heard and maybe people are listening to you, especially now, and people are still not listening. Like they don't hear you. This one person responded to my post, maybe out of a guilty conscience, that's what I think, saying, like, my brand has not posted anything in a while because we're relaunching. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And I was just like, okay. What my point is that you know the power of sharing and you didn't do it, right? It didn't move you to do it because you prioritize your brand, your color palette, your whatever else above that. So when you respond to me and you say, I'm prioritizing my relaunch, which means like the next thing I want to share is my own stuff for my own
Yeah.
brand,
Yeah.
you just proved my point. That's not a defense. It's not
Yeah.
a defense because that person is like the head of one of the more well-known modest fashion brands. So if you had at least pressed a share on something,
Yeah.
even in the
What would
midst
it
of
take
a relaunch,
away from you to do that? That's
what
what
would
I'm
it take?
questioning.
I just feel like it's selfish. If you're
Mhm.
thinking about you in these moments, it's selfish. If you're thinking
And
about
your coin. You
then
and your coin when
yeah,
people
but
are dying.
I was telling Anfal earlier, like I've been in a rage, right? And I saw this thing on TikTok, and somebody was like, free Palestine, and it was like during all of this stuff, and they had pictures of like people in Palestine who had it was images of like being knelt on in their necks and obviously really egregious things happening. But I was like, right now, this moment is not the time. Like
Yeah.
we did not forget about Palestine. I promise you, we're trying to free Gaza. We're trying to still be in all of our countries and do all of those things. But
Yeah.
you saying that right now is taking away from the message. You're not
Yeah.
understanding it. This isn't about you, and talking about Black issues is not taking away from any other issue.
Yeah.
This
Right.
is your
Yeah.
Something that I've also been finding frustrating is when people are like, look at these people out here rioting and causing violence in their community. They're just like going against themselves and degrading their own cause and this and that. I'm like, do you understand what you're saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
one thing to ask why are they doing this? I don't get it. And it's
Yeah.
another to vilify and
criticize.
just like
Yeah.
criticize
Pass
and
judgments
yeah, and
without
pass
understanding.
judgment. You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no idea the oppression that people are under. You have no idea the like the constraints. It's literally like I think why George Floyd really resonated with so many of us is because a knee on your neck is what a lot of us have felt a lot of our life, right? Like you
So
literally
symbolic.
feel choked,
Yeah.
like you're trying to achieve something and someone's like, nah, 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 it ain't for you. You try to do something, someone's like, you know what, it ain't your place to say it. And you do feel like something is really obstructing like your speech,
Life.
your potential, your
Your
this, your
livelihood.
that.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep. You hit
And
the
it's
nail
like,
on the head.
Yeah.
yeah. And it's
Um
It's a
with
physical representation of what Black people have had to endure for
Yeah.
many years in America. But
Yeah.
this was literally in your face, and you can't not say that everyone had that reaction. And if you didn't, then there is something wrong within you that you need to question.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's bringing up in people. It's bringing up the things they don't want to talk about, because now it's in your face and it's no one's staying home because of it. And we're going to talk about it.
It's been hundreds of years of this. And there's been so many types of movements. There's been like, online activism, and there's been
Colin
like
Kaepernick.
peaceful. There's been exactly. There's been so many, because people try to find different avenues that they haven't gone down before to try to have their voices heard. And so if they want to go down this avenue again and protest in this way again, as they have in the past, then that's just another avenue that they're trying again, because they've tried so many other things and they've failed. And this will probably not solve it, right? Like them burning down whatever they're doing, it's not going to solve it. But it's what else can you do? What else can you do? Like when no one's listening to you, how high can you yell?
I was talking to Brezan yesterday, and I was telling her that all of this stuff made me go back to a quote by Fanon when he was talking. It's in the context of colonialism, but it still really applies to us. Where he's talking about when people who have been oppressed take violence and protest in ways that are seen as like not the ideal. It's because like of the despair and of the inaction that has occurred around their oppression, right? It's because like they've reached a point where it's like there's nothing else to do. It's a way for them to like restore self-respect. It's a way for them to like show that we are here and we are continuing to fight for our cause, and we're not going to be silent. Like it might not be the pretty like way that you want us to like protest quietly and wait for you to give us our time and all of that, but it comes out of desperation. And people, I think, need to understand that. You might not agree with it, but you need to at least understand and not pass judgment.
Right.
Honestly, all that I've been seeing from like Trevor Noah and all like so many other activists on the internet, it's like there's no right way to protest, because protest in itself is a form of rebellion. Like
the rhetoric that's used when Black people express themselves is very different than the rhetoric used when white people or other. And we see it, the media, the tweets,
our leader
from that man in the White House. Like it's such literally a screen by screen shot of like how he talks about white people expressing themselves, and they're still citizens of this country, to the terms hooligans and people breaking laws, criminals, calling them those terms. That is rooted in something in America that we tiptoe around constantly. So this is wit's end. And I mean, we don't know what's going to come out of it if anything actually does change, but we just keep going through the same routine of getting to this is our limit. We hit it, then we flatline, and then we hit that next limit and go up to it.
Exactly.
That's what's making me feel helpless at this point, that it's like, what really can change? What can we do that actually causes change?
Yeah.
Hakeemah, how is it raising Black children in this context? So none of us here are parents, so I'm interested to know, like, how has that been for you? Because I feel like that's different.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, so I have 2 daughters, and they're 3 and 4. And I think like right now I'm at the junction of like, how am I going to educate them? So are they going to go to Islamic school? Are they going to go to public school? Like after COVID,
Yeah.
actually go to school. So alhamdulillah, actually, for this situation, not alhamdulillah for everything, but the situation of everyone staying home, because I feel like it's given me pause to deliberate more on this decision of how I will school them. Because when Amanda is 5, we'll have to formally be teaching her something, in some way, right? So like I had so much anxiety about like, how am I going to go about schooling them? Because my first experience with racism was in Islamic school, right? And so many people so many people that I know that I've spoken to have said that same statement as well. Like, as a minority in an Islamic school, that was my first time being up close and personal with someone calling me the N-word, someone like scrutinizing my hair, my skin, where I come from, like, how come you know this about Islam? Aren't you a convert? All of those things, right? So like with me and raising them, like that's where I was at before COVID kind of like had now everyone's at home and everyone's kind of like doing homeschooling. And I had been at the point where I'm like, you know what? I think I'm homeschooling them because I think I am, inshallah, going to be their best teacher. I'm already their best, example, just from the nature of being a mom. Everyone's mom is kind of like their best and first example. Yeah. But even as we proceed through them being like, going through adolescence and stuff like that, I still want to be at the forefront. And maybe that's overprotective, but I'm just gonna be that, okay? because I can't fathom the thought of them going to a school, because I had already said it's not gonna be public school, inshallah, but Islamic school, was the next best thing. But when I think about them going to a place where they've learned from their home to like love Muslims, to love being, they sing the songs I bought for Eid. They have like little prayer garments and we pray together. Like, like they're making their little wudu and stuff like that. They've learned to love Islam, like, and I'm teaching them about Prophet Muhammad. It's funny, the funniest thing, because like I taught them that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was an orphan, and that word, they don't, at 3 and 4 they don't get it, right? Yeah. So they actually play orphan around the house, like I'm an orphan. No, you're an orphan. Like,
oh my god,
using that word. They're just using that word, not knowing, okay, being an orphan is tragic, okay? but like they want to be anything that's cool, like Prophet Muhammad, right? Yeah. So for them to then go to a school where they're surrounded by other people who are saying salam alaikum and alhamdulillah and all those things that they identify as like great and right, and then also to feel the first pang of heartbreak that I'm treated differently by those people that are supposed to be the best. Yeah, it's like I want to protect them from that. Like, I was on it was Amana, she was 4. Well, she's still 4, but this was last year when she maybe had just turned 4. And she was on her tricycle ride, her first tricycle ride, literally the first time she's ever been on the tricycle. And I have my babies are 15 months apart. So the other one, like I couldn't have one on a tricycle all like wobbly and stuff. And then one's like kind of wobbly walking too. Like I had to have one on my back. So the younger one, Aya, she was strapped to my back with like one of those long cloths that like African ladies like strap their back, babies to their back. So I had her and I'm like, we're going to go on this tricycle ride. Like I'm being like super mom, And we already had a problem with like a neighbor across from us. And he had called the cops on my husband. Like it was a whole thing.
Oh, Lord.
And I was like, oh gosh, he's out with his dog. Like the love of his life is this dog. And he's on the sidewalk that I'm proceeding towards. And he saw me, because the sidewalk is not too long. He saw me come out and I'm proceeding down that sidewalk. And instead of him kind of like going about his business, he stood at the end of the sidewalk and he stood there with his dog. He just stood there. And I was like, okay, I'm coming towards him with 2 babies. Like, is he really going to start something right now? Like, why is he still standing there? Like, is he looking at a plane in the sky? Like, what is happening? Yeah. And I'm just looking down at them and I'm like, inshallah, everything's going to be okay. And I get close enough to him and the man has not stopped. He has not moved on. He's still standing there. He's looking straight at me. And I'm like, are you going to let us pass? Excuse me. And he's like, when you see me on a sidewalk, you should go to another one.
Who are you?
He said, didn't you see me on this sidewalk? You should go to another one. I was stunned. You guys, I was stunned that he waited for me at the end of that sidewalk to make the statement. And he had plenty of time to evaluate, am I going to be, an a-hole in this moment while there's a child on someone's back and another one on a tricycle? So when he said that, I was like, all I said was, excuse me. And he called me stupid. And then he walked around. And he walked so close to my baby's ankle on her little tricycle with that dog.
I'm like shaking.
How do you not just like lash out? Like I would have.
She has her babies with her.
I have my baby. So we're talking about being a mother in this time.
I would fight him. I would
go home, give the babies to my husband, and say, I'll be right back.
You stay right here. I'm coming back. Let me drop these babies off.
Oh my God,
girl! Like this really happened.
He's a bully.
He actually is.
And to say, and it's very symbolic. Like when we mention like it's symbolic to have someone die with a knee on your neck, and it's like the symbol of suffocation. Like we've been feeling like suffocating. Like
Yeah.
when he said, when you like, I'm on this sidewalk, you should go to another one. I'm just thinking like, can we not occupy the same spaces as you guys and still be comfortable and still
It's
be
saying so much more
Oh.
than in that moment.
yeah, like how many times have we felt like we can't be comfortable in the same spaces as white people? We can't fully be ourselves. We always have to code switch. We
Yeah.
always have to be on edge. We also always have to like be
Accommodate.
extraordinary in order for
Mhm.
someone to respect
And
us.
but nowadays, even that isn't enough. Now you have to explain why you're there. Like the videos that have surfaced the last couple of weeks, where white people are literally stopping you in your tracks, like, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you
Hmm.
occupying the same space as me?" Like, as if we
Yeah,
owe them an explanation for
right.
being.
It's like
How?
they're feeding off of each other, thinking that, because this is happening somewhere else in the country. It's feeding that confidence to be outwardly bigot and be
Right?
outwardly hating
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
and doing it in a way that's like, you're not breaking a law just enough, but just enough that you make somebody feel like you are superior to them
yeah.
in the way that you speak to them, in your body language, in
Hmm.
the slight actions you're taking against them.
Yeah.
And then it turns into something way bigger.
Yeah.
And then,
One of the things that I got a lot of people asking me was like, I want to be an ally. What should I do? Like
Mhm.
what? And I honestly, I'm stuck for the law, but I've ignored almost every single one of those messages because it's not as if it doesn't annoy me as much as it perplexes me, because I just I don't firstly, I don't think it's my responsibility as an individual to tell you what to do as an individual. I think that the internet is just such a vast place to find
Mhm.
so many resources that if you went a step beyond just asking me, you would probably find your answer by yourself.
Mhm.
yeah,
So it perplexes me too to know what to do. Like
yeah,
I don't know half the
Mhm.
time what to do. I don't know what to do when it's in my face and there's a
Mhm.
guy blocking me and asking me to go to another or telling me I should go somewhere else.
Mhm.
And I don't know what to do when I see someone die on camera with their knee on their neck.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do because I honestly feel like whatever we do, next month we're going to see another video.
yeah,
It's like
Like
they want you to
sadly we
process
are.
and help them to process. How can you do that when
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
like
dealing with it
I'm
So
so
yourself?
it's like
busy.
I need a hug. I need this.
I need a hug, but I'm the one who actually needs the hug too. But I need to
Yeah.
give you a hug now to make you feel
Yeah,
better.
and I'm the
Yeah.
one who, if I step out the house, I might be facing that same situation. Like I don't know what to do, and it's imminent. Like the problem is imminent to me.
Mhm.
So like, how about you be like in your comfortable place where you are right now? Figure it out at least for now. Like give me a few days so that maybe I can respond to your message. But in that moment, I can't tell you what to do. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much thing like people online, especially we're in a creative space. Like you tell yourself a creator, so then
Yeah,
create. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
just go ahead and create something, and most likely we will appreciate it if you did it well. And there's some people who have never prioritized, like we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, they've never prioritized diversity in their
Mhm.
branding. They've never done any kind of self-reflection on how they present themselves online. Then that's something that's completely in your control, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not in our control what cop is going to be called to the next scene of an unarmed black man. It's not in our control. Like we hope that he won't do anything wrong in that situation. But there's certain things that our hands have set forth. We've created brands. We've become like, influencers or people on platforms. And that's something that we've created. And so then that's something we can change. Even like tomorrow with your next post, you can change.
yeah,
With your next project, you can be different. If you only took the time to make sure that this was important enough for you to be like, okay, I'm going to get outside of my comfort zone and I'm going to do something that nobody expected. And even if it doesn't get the likes, or even if it doesn't get like, people sharing it as much, it's important to me because I'm changing. I'm changing to try to
yeah.
make the world change as well.
I think that is the perfect place to end, girl.
Oh,
You
You
just
said
said
it. You said it.
That was
You said
perfect.
you
it.
literally just said it. Ugh, thank you
It's,
so much for joining
thank
us
you
and for
guys.
having this conversation. I feel
It's been
like
so refreshing, Hakeemah. Thank you so much for being so open with us and sharing some of these stories that, I feel much closer to you right now, honestly. And like, and just sharing the story and this vulnerability. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
It's a hard time
Yeah.
and we need to lean on each other. And honestly,
Yeah.
talking to people who look like me, who are dealing with these same things, helps take some of the weight off of my heart. So I really
Alhamdulillah.
appreciate talking to you.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, I just really appreciate you guys for, noticing me and, acknowledging me and reaching out to me and inviting me into your space that you've created, because this space that you guys have on your podcast is really, really important. And, I've never had like this sisterhood outside of my own sisters. I've never had the sisterhood of just like Black women. Like, it's always been a diverse set, and that's really important. That's really great too, but sometimes you just need to talk to people who relate to you on that skin color level,
Yep.
because that really brings an experience with it, and like a camaraderie that, like, other people, it kind of like it's not there as naturally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you guys, and this was excellent, and it was a perfect time to talk
Yes.
about things.
Yes.
Well, as they
Oh,
say,
you
you have
did.
a friend in me, you have a sister in me. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us,
Thank you,
Hakeemah.
Hakeemah.
Thank you.